Commissioner Spees, who's testifying today, did testify before this commission, and his last testimony was on the 11th of November 2025. But he was testifying in relation to the events and incident relating to a Dlamini Metropolitan Department. And today it is not a continuation of that. He comes under a completely separate stream, which is what we refer as the Tshwane Metropolitan Police Department. He has since retired, and it was recorded then when he came before the commission that, in fact, when he testified before this commission in November, already he had retired from EMPD and now deployed by the TMPD.
February 2025, I think.
That is correct.
Yes.
And he started the SAT on the 2nd of March.
March
2025.
2025.
Yes, so just so that we are clear that it's not a continuation. We try to label his annexed charge as well to avoid any sort of confusion as to that testimony. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Musigiri. I've forgotten now whether you saw or you affirmed.
Sworn, Commissioner.
Do you swear that the evidence you are going to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Commissioner Spees. Again, could you just formally put your name on record?
My full name is Revo Spees.
Thank you. Commissioner, you will see that you should have before you 4 white files. There should be 2 big ones and 2 small files. Can you confirm that?
Correct, Commissioner.
Thank you. Before we deal with the contents of those files, can you confirm that you have prepared a statement and submitted one to this commission so that it can be used in your testimony?
Correct. I have prepared a statement relating to the Tshwane Metro Police portion, and I have submitted it.
Thank you. May we then go to file 1 of 4? It's one of the smaller files. And you will see on the index there, it lists a document, statement of Revo Spees. Do you see that, Commissioner Spees?
Correct.
And then you will see that if you flip over, and the last page to that document will be page 19.
That's correct.
Do you see that? Do you confirm that this is your statement that you submitted for consideration by the Commission?
Yes, I confirm that that is my statement.
Is your copy signed, Commissioner? And what about yours, Mr. Musigiri?
Yes.
Ours are not.
Yes, Chair, that's the next question that I want to put to the witness. The statements to answer you, Chair, they are not signed.
Yes.
And I want to put to the Commissioner, is this a statement that you intend on signing as reasonably as possible, confirming the contents of that statement?
Correct. I've signed my own version, but mine is at home. But the bundle version, I'm prepared to sign them now as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. And lastly, you confirm the correctness of your statement there too.
I confirm the correctness thereof.
Thank you. Can we then go to the actual statement? You will see that from paragraph 1 to 6, you deal with the introduction and the education and career background. Could you perhaps read these contents into the record, and just highlighting your history of service as set out in these paragraphs?
May I just intervene and ask, Commissioner, besides you joining Tshwane Metropolitan, or rather the Tshwane Metropolitan Police Department. Is there anything new to what you would have given us when you testified earlier?
New in terms of my previous testimony.
I'm saying in addition to what you already told us about your career advancement or progression,
No.
besides your move to Tshwane, is there anything else that is new?
No, Commissioners, maybe just a misconception that it could be a misconception, but I officially retired.
No.
And then I started, but there's nothing else in my career that changed.
I'm not there at all. I'm just trying to say perhaps we don't need to go over this because we already have your details.
It's exactly the same.
Yes, I think you can then proceed to 6 years, to paragraph 6.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes.
Then you will see Commissioner Spees under paragraph 6. The heading there will be the responsibilities that you have now at TMPD. Can you deal with that together with paragraph 7 there too?
Correct. Commissioners, I've been appointed in the City of Tshwane Metro Police from the 1st of March as the Deputy Chief of Police for Asset Protection and Security Services. It's a division within the Metro Police and serves under the Chief of Police, Commissioner Yolanda Faru. My main functions and responsibilities is to exercise control over this division, and in this division itself, I am accountable for the physical security and technical systems, the operational support around the technical systems and the physical security, and then physical guard services. The difference between 6.1 and 6.3 when we deal with physical security is that we operate a hybrid system, meaning that we have in-house security, which is on the payroll of the city. It is security officers employed by the city. There are 1,270 of those guards, and then there's a contracted portion, which is to 22 service providers, which I will deal with later. That is contracted services who's deployed through the 7 regions. Part of this division, that contracted services, there is a tender in place with the number TMPD 02 2016-2017. And I do understand that this falls within the Commission's subject matter, and it deals with the physical guarding of the city where it's contracted services. That tender itself, as the number indicate, obviously originate from the 2016-27 municipal financial year. So when I testify about that tender, it's about the historical context of it, what I've determined and learned in my 1 year, I've just over a year's service now.
Thank you, Commissioner Spees. Perhaps I should bring to your attention that in the past 3 days of the commission, we had Sergeant Nkosi testifying and touching base on some of the tenders that form an integral part of your testimony. So the commissioners at least have been part informed of the issues relating to those tenders, and they might want to interrupt and ask you questions as they understood the terms of those tenders during the testimony of Sergeant Nkosi. But I'm not limiting you to what you would like to share with the commission when it comes to these tenders, but just take heed of that caution. Can we then, with that said...
Just before you move to the next section, Commissioner Spees, Chair asked you if there was anything you wanted to add since your last testimony. Your testimony focused on your stint as a Deputy Chief of Police at Ekurhuleni. I just want to understand, at Tshwane, are you on contract? So is it a 3-year contract? What exactly is the situation as far as your employment is concerned?
No, Commissioner. At Ekurhuleni, I was appointed as a Section 56 contract employee for a period of 5 years, which I took early retirement.
Yes.
However, in August 2022, a new government gazette was regulated where only employees that directly report to the city manager as accounting officer is considered or deemed to be Section 56. So when I was appointed in the city of Tshwane, I was appointed as a permanent employee till I reached the compulsory retirement age of 65 years. So I'm now a permanent employee with a performance contract, but not with an employment fixed-term
So
contract.
it's not a 5-year situation that existed?
No, it's not that. It's a permanent contract that I've been employed with until I reach the retirement compulsory age of 65.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. Commissioner Spees, can we then speak to the contents of paragraph 8 and 9 of your statement?
Commissioners, the tender TMPD 2 2016-2017, that is for the supply of physical security to protect the property assets and the personnel of Tshwane Metropolitan Municipality. This tender originates from what we call a TAR. It's a tender advertisement request form, which was issued at that stage in 2016-20 by a director, Chukudu Malachi. He was the director of the protection services, and this TAR was issued on 8 July 2016. At that stage, it was co-signed by the then Deputy Chief of Police, Specialized Services, Mr. R.R. Mashlaule. And on 19 July 2016, this was approved by the then Chief of Police, Mr. K.S. Ngubeni. I'm also attaching that specific TAR as RS21 as a reference.
Thank you. Chair, you will see that the witness is referring to RS21. However, Chair, the way I intend dealing with some of these annexures is that because the tender was adjudicated years ago, it is not necessary for us to dwell into that and also consider what irregularities might or might not have occurred. We don't think it's relevant. However, when we come to the most relevant annexures, I will take the witness there, Chair. With that said, Mr. Commissioner Spees, I would still, Chair, though, insist that some of the names that appear, especially from different tender committees, be mentioned because they become relevant at a later stage. Thank you, Chair. Then, Commissioner Spees, can we then pick it up from paragraph 10 of your statement?
In the original TAR, there was a proposed bid specification committee which the department then proposed, which stated that these members are Director Racheku, Director N. Musa, Commissioners Sibaya, Mr. Faik Alexander, and Mr. Peter Robinson. However, when these bid specifications were serving at the initial bid specification committee on Monday, 1 September, the committee members that actually did the BSc, it was not the same as the bid specification committee nominations. So the members in paragraph 11 then is the actual members who approved the bid specification of this tender. And they were Mr. Kes Matlapeng, he was a director at the Tshwane Metro Police, he was the chairperson. Mr. Vusi Nkuna, which is indicated as the Director Land Invasion. Mr. Sipu Nkomo, Director Tshwane Metro Police. And Mr. Faik Alexander, who's from Supply Chain Management, is Director Secretariat Services. And then Mr. Peter Robinson, Group Legal Deputy Director for the Corporate and Council Legal Compliance.
I assume, Commissioner, that everything you tell us in connection with this tender before you joined TMPD's information gleaned from documents or records within the Tshwane Metro.
Correct, Commissioner. The names that is here is obviously, as I was appointed, I started to collect the tender, the award letters, the bid specification committee, so that I do understand the tender that we currently are operating under. So when I read these names, it is from bid specification committees, agendas, and minutes that I read the names.
All right.
I obviously, some of the names I do know because they still work for the department. Some of the names, I don't know them at all.
Just names, you don't know the people. All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, Mr. Masigidi.
Thank you, Chair. You may continue. Commissioner, I think you were at paragraph 12 now, you're
12.
approaching there, yes.
part of the process of a bid specification committee and all the committees thereafter, bid specification, the bid evaluation, and the bid award committee, is that every member must sign and make under oath a declaration that they have no interest in the tender. So all of the declarations is then in a reference RS23, a bundle where all the declarations are as combined as one bundle or one reference. This tender was advertised on 30 September 2016, and then it was eventually evaluated by 2 bid evaluation committees. And I'll deal later with why 2 bid evaluation committees. But the first bid evaluation committee was a Mr. Maloko Racheku, who was the chairperson, Mr. Chukudu Malachi, Mr. Vusi Nkuna, Mr. Malusi Mashlanga, and Mr. Murutsi Mpashlele. So, and this is why I say I've read the documents. It's not that I do have personal knowledge of this, because there seem to have been irregularities with the first bid evaluation process, because on 24 January 2017, a report was submitted to the Executive Adjudication Committee by Mr. Tembeka Mpefu, in which irregularities during the first BEC were detected. It was then recommended that the entire process be restarted. And in this regard, I've attached that actual letter as well from Mr. Mpefu. In that report, it stated that this first BEC committee, as in paragraph 14, they removed all the bid documents of all the tenderers from the supply chain management premises to an unknown venue at Premos. Premos to us is the Tshwane Leadership Academy in Pretoria West. And later, when they finished with the evaluation, they returned the documents, and then they were missing documents, which makes it an irregularity. And at that same time, he also stated that one of the BEC supply chain members resigned from the BEC due to irregularities he experienced. And that is from Mr. Mpefu's report that he submitted to the Executive Adjudication Committee, with a request that this tender be cancelled and restarted.
Mr. Moloko Racheku in 14.1, is it the same person as Director Racheku in 10.1?
Correct. And then obviously the decision was made at the bid adjudication that this tender be cancelled and start afresh because of irregularities that was mentioned in it. However, one of the bidders, Lebele Lang Mashlatsi Trading Pty Ltd, they approached the High Court in Gauteng with a case number of 32325 of 2017. And Justice Fabricius on 24 May 2018 directed that this tender may not be cancelled, it must be re-evaluated afresh, and the same order of the Justice Fabricius also extended the validity of this procurement process by another 90 days. In compliance with this order, a second BEC committee was then appointed to evaluate the tender afresh. This 90-day period is that when a tender is advertised, it normally will have an initial 90-day period that it must be concluded within. So this period is obviously been passed, and that's why the judge then made the ruling that that period be extended to start the process afresh for evaluation only. And then the second BEC committee members which were then appointed was a Mr. Chris Tipe, who was the chairperson, and he was the divisional head of Treasury Department. Mr. Mtubeli Kolisa, he was the group head of Environment and Agriculture Management. Mrs. Verusha Morgan, who was the group head Property. Mr. Kwena Nkoko, group head Health. Mrs. Nosipu Slachwayo, the group head of City Strategies and Organizational Performance. And a Pamela Rakulele Ngabutle, who was the deputy director Demand in Supply Chain Management. This committee, after evaluation, it appears that they again resolved that the tender be cancelled due to irregularities during the bid evaluation process, still linked to the original missing tender documents, which were deemed to be highly irregular. And at that stage, the group of 22 companies that were originally proposed to be awarded the tender approached the court again. And then Ladyship Justice Molopo Setosa issued a court ruling on 22 October 2021 that the tender be awarded to the 22 companies, and the city must enter into a service level agreement with this list of companies. And for that matter, it is listed the court ruling as RS25. And then based on that court ruling, the city drafted the SLAs, and the tender then officially commenced on 1 March 2022 with this list of 22 companies that was awarded in the ruling by the court.
Commissioner, would you please look at file 4. I want you to read the contents of annexure RS25 into the record. So it will be this, it's a smaller file. It's file 404, and then I refer you to page 945.
I confirm that that is the court order that was issued by Her Ladyship Justice Molopo Setosa.
Yes, can you just read at least the first paragraph on that page? So paragraph 1, it actually spills over to the second page.
Sorry, must I read the order into the record?
Yes, please.
By agreement between the parties, it is ordered that 1, the respondent's decision to cancel tender TMPD 02 2016-17 is substituted with the following decision. 1.1, tender TMPD 02 2016-17 is awarded to the applicant and such other bidders who 1.1.1 were recommended for the supply of physical guarding services to protect council property and personnel of the City of Tshwane for a period of 3 years at variable amounts as reflected in paragraph 20 of the report of the Bid Evaluation Committee at page 003-93 of the case lines record, and 1.12 are registered with the Private Security Industry Regulation Authority as at the date of this order. 2, the respondent is ordered to conclude service level agreements with the aforesaid bidders, which agreement shall detail the agreed services to be delivered, how such a service is measured in the provision thereof, and the response time required for such a service. The respondent is ordered to pay the applicant's cost, save that the cost of the day in respect of 21 October 21 will be taxed on the unopposed scale.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just to be clear, okay.
Before you move on. Morning, Commissioner.
Morning.
In that paragraph 19, the very last line where you say the council then started the tender on March 2022, paragraph 19 of your statement,
Yes, Commissioner.
when you say it started the tender, you mean implementation
Correct,
of
Commissioner.
that tender, not a new tender process.
No. It's because of the court order on 22 October, it took a while for the corporate and legal to design and create the service level agreements. And then the service level agreements and the contracts and everything was only completed in February 2022, and the tender then commenced 1 March 2022.
Okay, thank you.
So because the tender was a 2017, 2016, that year, I think, going into the next year, 16, 17, if it was delayed for what looks like 4 or 5 years, does it mean the previous service providers had their contracts extended on a month-to-month basis?
Before this tender?
Yes. What happened
Correct.
between 2017 and 2022 when this tender was restarted, as you say on paragraph 19?
Correct, Commissioner. There was a tender in place with a group of service providers. And when this tender process was initiated, it was obviously to replace that previous tender. And when the first court interdicts and rulings started, those tenders were extended on a month-to-month basis up to February 2022. So effectively at 28th of February 2022, those tenders then were completed, and on 1 March 22, this 2016-2017 tender actually commenced.
Commissioner, you say that the tender was eventually awarded after a second approach to the High Court to 22 companies that were originally proposed to be awarded the tender. I've been going through this back and forth. I don't see where it was proposed that the tender be awarded to the 22 companies.
Commissioner, in the BEC committee's minutes
Yes.
that they submitted to the BAC, the Bid Award Committee,
Yes.
in that report, there was a total evaluation of 22 companies.
Yes.
And they did the complete evaluation. And that 22 companies have been in the BEC the whole time. But when it was then submitted, the whole report about that 22 companies was submitted to the BAC with a recommendation that that whole process must be stopped and cancelled. So it was not awarded to the 22 through the city's actions. The whole way, even though they were evaluated, and there were 22 companies that was deemed to be by the BEC successful. That report continuously then stated, but there's missing documents, there's irregularities. And therefore, when it got to the BAC took that in consideration and said, but there's missing documents, it's highly irregular and it should be cancelled. The then chairperson of the BAC was the previous CFO of the city, Umar Banda. And he signed off and said it must be cancelled due to irregularities. However, Judge Fabricius very narrowly in the first court order, and I'm not obviously saying I've got an ethical response, but I'm not saying the judge was wrong. The judge did the legal correct thing, when he stated that the then legislation had a very narrow portion that you can cancel a tender with. And the words irregular or missing was not in that wording. So he ruled that you cannot use that to cancel the tender. That's why it must be started afresh. And obviously today with hindsight, when you hear the word irregular in my head, it should be cancelled immediately. We shouldn't proceed. And then in the second BEC, they took the same report, the same companies, and stated these were the most successful companies in the evaluation, but due to these missing documents, it is still an irregularity and we must be cancelled. And the chairperson again, Mr. Banda, again said, no, it must be cancelled because of this irregularity. And that's when the 22 companies, because the city, I don't know how it got out, but everyone leaked most probably the information, and then the 22 companies knew that they were deemed by the BEC to be successful, but they took then the decision to court to say, no, but we are successful, and that's when the court then made the ruling to say that those 22 companies we initially were must be awarded the tender.
Thank you for the clarification. I guess what confused me was the fact that it appears, both from what I read here and from what you say now, that there was never a pronouncement by the bid adjudication committee that there's going to be an award to the 22 companies. So that's why it sort of sounded odd, and indeed it is odd that there was then an award to the 22 companies, despite the fact that the bid adjudication committee never pronounced that that should be the position. But I just wanted clarity, yeah. Thank you.
Correct.
Yes, Mr. Musigiri?
Thank you, Chair. And also to be fair to the court, that agreement, or at least that court order, seems to be, it's by agreement between the parties anyway.
Correct.
Thank you, Commissioner Spees. Can we then pick it up at paragraph 20, where we deal with these companies?
So the list of 22 companies that was then awarded and commenced on the 1st of March 2022, and to date is still working under this contract, is Goobies 85 Solutions Pty Ltd, Izingwenya 210 Investment CC, Triotic Protection Services CC, Butler Kumedi Management Services, both Best Trading and Projects, Ilutsaki Construction and Cleaning Enterprise, Hotline Security Services, Lebele Lang Mashlatsi Trading, Lejani Trading Enterprise, Mabotwana Security Services, Marumu Maepe Cleaning, Security and Civil Construction, Mogalakhadi Security, NEP Security Services, Piri Piri Trading Enterprise, Rahite Security and Consulting, Ramalepe Security and Cleaning Services, Seputwe Trading Enterprise, Skets Projects, Sukol Renting and Construction, Takana Limpopo, Flopanang Business Enterprises, and Vugi Protection Services. And this tender, which then commenced on the 1st of March 2022, as per the prescripts of the MFMA Act, 3-year period, then concluded on the 28th of February 25 as a contract at that stage.
Chair, I would request that the commissioners perhaps highlight the first 3 companies on that list. These are the companies that will be forming the subject matter of our discussion. The chair would have also noticed from the previous evidence of Sergeant Ngosi that at least 2 of those 3 companies were canvassed with him, and we sample those 3 in the TMPD stream and also try to draw a linkage with the terms of reference, especially where there is a suspicion of interference by syndicate or so-called cartels. So those 3 names on top will be the one that will feature quite often in this stream of TMPD.
So the first 3, namely Goobies 85 Solutions, Izingwenya 210 Investments, Triotic Protection Services.
Indeed, there might be that we pick 1 or 2, but after that, but these are the 3 that there will be a common feature through the TMPD.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner, can I just add that I'm not placing them in that order automatically. I actually use the alphabetical order of the names. It's accidental that they are at the top.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Noted, Commissioner Spees. Can we then proceed? We deal with a separate topic. Perhaps, if before we go there, please deal with paragraph 21 before we go to the new topic.
So I did mention that is that the contract is awarded for a period of 3 years as per the Municipal Finance Management Act, and because it commenced the 1st of March 2022, the end date will then be 28 February 2025, which is that 3-year period. So this contract then came to an end on that date, but obviously we're still under it, and I will explain now in my next portion why the tender has been extended and why it's still ongoing.
Yes, no, thank you. And that will speak to the question that was raised by Commissioner Khumalo earlier on to say what happens when one contract expires and probably the processes that are required to extend. Can we then deal with that, Commissioner Spees? Thank you.
So in this specific, and I think I deal later with it as well, where I just was stated that this specific division that I'm in charge of was created and started on the structure 1 July 2024. The asset protection unit was then moved from the city manager's office to the Metro Police in the new division. It was originally a unit and it's now a division, asset protection and security services. So in 1 July 2024, when this unit was moved over to Tshwane Metro Police as a division, it was discovered that this tender would expire in 28 February 2025. So a new process to replace this existing tender was initiated already in August, internally in the department, but at November 2024, this tender was then registered with a contract number of TMPD 32425, and that started with the process where it was BSC advertised, and the closing date was in the middle of February. So it has not yet been concluded by 28 February. So because the closing date of the bid itself was in the middle of February, there was not enough time to go through the bid evaluation process. There were a huge amount of bidders that submitted documents. So the bid evaluation process and the BAC process could not be concluded in time. So a report was then submitted to the BAC before the tender expired, and this report was then to extend the original tender to 2016-2017, and it was submitted to the BAC inter alia by Deputy Commissioner Dlamini from the Tshwane Metro Police, and then it was approved by the then chairperson of the BAC, Mr. Gareth Manisi, on the 27th of February 25, and it was final signed off by the accounting officer on the 28th of February to extend the tender for a period of 4 months till the 30th of June 2025 to give time for the new tender 324-25 to be evaluated and to be concluded and awarded.
Commissioner Spees, can I just understand in that paragraph 23, where you say that it was approved by the extension was approved by the chairperson of the BAC, how does it work? Is it not the committee that approves the extension? The way you've said it here, it seems like it's an individual, and the individual being the chairperson.
Commissioner, it is a committee, so the report is presented by the department to the committee. The committee does obviously discuss the matter between themselves, and then it's recommended, and the chairperson of the committee signs off on the report as a recommendation to the accounting officer, and then the accounting officer sign off based on the recommendation from the chairperson.
So it's a decision of the committee?
Correct, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spees, perhaps to give context to the clarity-seeking question by Commissioner Baloyi, could you go to the actual minute of the BAC? It will be on the smaller file. It will be file 4 of 4.
Sorry, which number?
945.
There was one minor issue I wanted to raise earlier, but I forgot. It took me a bit of time to find 945 uppercase A, because I was expecting it to be after 945. You know, for example, even with legislation, including subordinate legislation, the uppercase A or B, whatever the letter may be, usually signifies an insertion. And if it's 945, then the A will be indicating that it's an insertion after 945. So in the end, I was shown by Commissioner Kumalo where 945A is, because I was looking at the wrong place. That's just for the future.
I accept that, Chair.
Yes,
and
yes.
I think it is an insertion while trying to sort out the
Yes.
bundle, as it were, but you're quite correct.
No problem.
We should have mentioned the capital A.
Yes.
So now we deal with 945 with no capital A. Commissioner Spees, are you there?
Correct.
Yes. Can you read into the record at the very top what this document is?
It's the minutes of the bid adjudication committee dated 27 February 2025. And it's a further report where the Tshwane Metro Police Department is requesting for the approval for the extension of the security tender TMPD 2 2016-17 for the supply of physical security guarding services to protect the property, assets and personnel of the City of Tshwane on a month-to-month basis for a period not exceeding 4 months with effect from 1 March 2025 to 30 June 2025.
And this is the document you refer to at paragraph 23 of your statement.
Correct. That's the bid which was then signed off at the end of the chairperson of the bid award committee.
Yes. Can you then go to the next page? I just want you to concentrate only on the parts that are put in bold. You can start with line 2 there too. will be on page 946,
The middle portion.
the middle portion, yes.
Yes. As is practice in a BAC report, normally the BSC or BEC chairperson will also be present of the previous committee, but the report itself was presented by Veli Nwandule and Umashi Dlamini from the Metro Police. And then the resolutions that were made is that they noted the amendments that were done as recommended by the Bid Adjudication Committee of meeting of 20 February 2024, and the previous indication stating that the contract had expired and was corrected, and it further stated that it was valid until the 28th of February. It does not require a request for deviation. There was obviously what from hindsight, because I wasn't here, is that there was a meeting because of the confusion of dates of a contract starts on 1 March and the previous contract was stated that it ended on 1 February. Whereas if a contract starts on 1 March, it actually ends at 28 February because it's valid for a full year. And then on the 20 February, there was a BAC where it was corrected in the BAC and they had to redo the report to come back with this report on the 27th of February. And therefore, you don't need a deviation because it is, while the tender is still ongoing, you can do the application to extend it. If the tender has expired, it becomes irregular and a deviation report that must then be approved. And the department confirmed that the amount was still below the 15% markup and that the budget was in place for the 4 months. It's also stating then on the next page that the service level agreements is that the date for resuming duties was 1 March because they were arguing in that meeting about does it start 1 February, does it end 1 February or does it end 28 February. But eventually it was cleared out is that because of the court ruling and the SLA, it commenced 1 March and that it therefore ends on 28 February. And then the rulings is just that the contracts and everything forms part of the approval pack because the original SLAs is kept intact, it's not changed at all. The whole contract stays as is for the extension going forward. And the committee emphasized that it relied on the information presented by the department on the SLAs as the commencement date, and it was therefore then resolved that the service level agreements for the original 22 service providers with commencement date 1 March 2022 be extended. And then on the next page, 948.5 is listing just the 22 companies up to 949, which is exactly the same companies. Their order is just a random order where mine was alphabetical, but it's the same 22 companies. And then on page 949, it was signed off as recommended by the chairperson of the BAC, Mr. Gareth Menisi, on the 28th of February 25, and it was then final approval by the accounting officer, Mr. Metler, as the city manager.
I noticed, Commissioner, that it is this list, this second list, that is actually alphabetical. The earlier one was not.
Oh.
So the first 3 companies are not in alphabetical or do not follow in alphabetical.
Sorry, I have to correct it then, Commissioner, but it's a random type. It's not that I actually...
Yes.
The letters, how it came from is the pack of award letters that I have, in the order that they are, I typed their names, so I made an assumption on that.
All right, no, that's fine. Yes, Mr. Musigiri?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Spees.
Just a question on this. Commissioner Spees, what's happening in our municipalities? Why is it so difficult to evaluate tenders before the previous one expires so that you can appoint new service providers on time? Why is it that you continuously see this thing where a tender is advertised, you know that the previous contract is a 3-year contract and it's going to expire at the end of February, but you don't complete the evaluation process and the new appointment before the end of February. And then you have to favor the companies that were appointed under the previous tender because you continuously extend their contracts and they get paid out of the municipality when in truth their term has expired because it was a 3-year term. You are effectively giving them 3.5 years now. Why is it that this is always happening?
Commissioner, on a general note, on my experience, is that in terms of the MFMA Act, it has very strict deadlines and guidelines of, let's say, a period of 90 days, that a tender must be, through all the committees, approved, advertised, and it must be evaluated and awarded. However, in the process, if you look at, and I cannot speak what happened here, but we restarted this tender afresh this year. It was advertised, it was approved to go to BSc in December, the decision was made. The first BSc sat in January. It was approved, it was advertised at the end of January, and it closed on the 10th of March. In between, there's a briefing session where all the prospective bidders must be at the briefing compulsory session. At the briefing session, there were more than 1,200 companies. If we then go on, I don't know what obviously happened further because I'm not part of the BEC process, but if all 1,200 that was at the briefing session submit a bid, and it's a document this thick, you then get to the evaluation stage, the committee must physically go to every one of those companies and physically visit their sites, tick off on a checklist to say, you have all the specifications, requirements, you have it. Give them scoring points, then write a report, then go to verify that the company's documentation with SARS, PSIRA, all of that exists. That administrative bureaucracy process is when it is a large amount of tenders, like 1,200 people, no, I'm not saying people, companies, that creates a massive delay because of the large amount that is there, especially with tenders like these. And even now, there's a new process that's been introduced which also make a delay in the tenders. And I will touch on it later as well, which happened in the specific tenders. Because we as management start to notice that there's wrongness either at the BSc or at the BEC, because we know that there's tenders that is highly susceptible to wrongness. The city has introduced a process called probity. So now it will happen that the BEC will evaluate and do all of this work. Then probity will be the group audit and risk, which is a complete separate department as audit. They will redo the complete process of the BEC to verify that the BEC didn't crook. And then, so it's a second evaluation process. And then the probity report will be included into the BEC's result, and only then will it go to the BAC, which still have then the choice to say, but we don't believe whatever BEC or whatever probity found. Probity could found wrongness. And then if probity found wrongness, then the report will actually state that there was wrongness and it be cancelled again. So it is a problematic process of delays that happen because of volumes that is involved.
But then it means if you know that a 3-year contract is expiring at the end of February 2025 or 2020, you must start the process a year earlier. You can't start it 3 months before the contract expires. And then when you get to the expiry, you say, oh, we had 1,200 bids. You must expect that in advance and plan in advance. And the reason I'm raising this is you mentioned the 3 companies that the evidence leader said will be the focus of this stream. They have been favored because it means their contracts have been extended after their term has expired. And that would apply to the other 22. And the question I'm asking myself, maybe it will come up later, is whether this was done deliberately to favor these companies, or if, as you say, it's simply the volume that overwhelmed those who were evaluating the bids. I don't know.
Commissioner, on the one side, I have to agree with you, but as a city, from now that I know of, we actually do start earlier. We take 9 months before tenders expires. We as management and TMPD already sit with a 9-month list to say that these tenders will expire in the next 9 months. The process must be started so that we start internally the processes. It is still, the internal process has started, but from the day that you had advertised, from that day onwards, there's the 90-day. even though we have actually asked that 90 days must be extended because we know for some tenders, probity will come in, and that will add a portion to it as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Spees. Perhaps to give justice to Commissioner Balui's question earlier on with regard to Gareth Munisi, you'll see that at 949, the question was, you had said in your statement he approved, but you will see there the signature comes as someone who recommended and signed off. You accept that?
Correct. That's, as I stated, is that the chairperson of the BAC recommend and sign off on it.
Yes. Now, what I want to bring to attention is that there has been evidence by the previous witness, Sergeant Nkosi, dealing with WhatsApp conversations between himself, Mr. Gareth Munisi, Mr. Umashi Dlamini, in particular around that specific time of the extension of the contracts and a few days later. So what I want to ask you, fairly so to say that, would it be your fair observation at the very least, nothing higher than that, to say that both Mr. Munisi and Dlamini played some role in the extension of this tender?
Correct, but I cannot obviously say
I'm just thinking, should we not rely on what is gleaned from the WhatsApp texts on that and not require the commissioner to express an opinion on the matter?
I accept that to an extent that he is dealing with the document that deals with the extension of that tender and the times. And obviously, Chair, we will marry it together at the relevant time to draw the dots with the conversation without drawing him there. But just to bring...
I guess what I'm saying is drawing those lines or linking those dots, I don't think that it gets better by whatever view the commissioner may express.
I take that.
Get what I mean?
Yes, Chair.
Yes. I'm not sure whether you completed this by making reference to the approval by the city manager after the chairperson of the BAC had made a recommendation. That is at 949. Did we get to that point? Commissioner? That is, after the recommendation by Mr. Munisi, the chairperson of the PAC, the city manager then also signed off approving.
Correct,
and
Commissioner.
And just to add to that, to the chair's question, just explain to us the role that the city manager plays in this regard as approved.
Yes.
Thank you.
The city manager is, as per the System and the Structures Act, he's the accounting officer for the city as the #1 official. And therefore, whatever the BAC recommend to him, he signs it off as the accounting officer. He's not directly involved in the process at all, except signing off as the accounting officer for the city. The BAC committee is the one who make the decision and resolution, which is then signed off as recommended by the chairperson of the BAC. And then the city manager, as only in his role as accounting officer, signs off on it.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Musigiri?
Thank you. Commissioner Spees, in your exchange with Commissioner Kumalo, you had touched a bit on the probity process. Can you just pick it up there to an extent that you need to, from paragraph 24?
Yes. This new replacement tender, which is the 32425, was then obviously completed and it was evaluated. And in this process, at the end of March, beginning of April, when the BEC concluded its work, this tender was then selected for probity. And probity process then ran its course, which initially was thought it would only be 30 days. It eventually ran up to the end of October, or middle of October. Probity took a very, very long time to do it. And during this process, the tender expired, this extension of the tender expired 30 June. And this was then, in the meantime, I've now been appointed, so now I'm presenting the report to the BEC, to the BIC to say, but this tender is selected for probity. We still have to now continue with the services because of the probity process that is busy. It was then initially thought we extended for 3 months because then probity would be finished from 1 July 25 to 30 September 25. And then in September, the probity process was not yet concluded, and it was then extended again for 1 October to 31 December so that the probity process could be concluded. And in that process, at the October portion, the probity report was concluded, and they submitted their report to the BEC. So the BEC will then present the probity report together with their original findings to the BAC. And this served in October 25 at the BAC, and it was then resolved by the BAC chairperson as well, Mr. Manisi, that this new replacement tender, the 324-25, must be cancelled because there was 2 reasons that was given on the report. The one reason, and it comes from probity, what probity found. The one reason was that the pricing schedule that was attached to the tender originally was ambiguous, and the reason for the ambiguity was that the BEC stated that on the pricing schedule there may be no blank spaces. If there's a blank space, it must either be scratched out or it must be written not applicable. And probity indicated that it should be written as R0.00 and not as not applicable. It was their findings. And then the second finding was that when the documents was removed from supply chain in the BEC, there was a register where probity signed for all the documents, all the bid documents. However, when they returned it, 6 documents were missing. And that missing documents then caused the second reason why this tender, because it's irregular, and it's the second reason that this tender be cancelled because of this irregularity, and the process must therefore commence afresh again with a new tender process that must be started.
Commissioner,
It seems the easiest way to scupper a procurement process is just to remove documents, throw them away, the result of which will be that the process has become irregular. This is not the first time this is happening. It happened at the stage of the evaluation of the very contract that's being extended from time to time now. I wonder how the documents get or go missing.
Commissioner, with the new afresh tender which we started this year, we have added a specification and a clause is that every tenderer shall submit not only his physical documents, he shall also submit the electronic digital version of it, so that there will now be 2 versions. There will be not 2 versions, there will be exactly the same document, but one will be a digital version that's submitted, which will be then electronically filed by the city, and there will be a hard copy which will then be evaluated to prevent any documents from going missing in future again.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Spees, just for the record on this subject, can you go to the very annexure RS27? That will be on file 4 on page 950. So it's the smaller file again.
Starting at 950.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Spees, what I want you, Commissioner Spees, I want you to look at read into the record the title of that document.
This is the Bid Adjudication Committee dated 23 October 25, and it's the Tshwane Metro Police Department TMPD 03-2024-25 cancellation report. Tender for the appointment of a service provider to provide security services at various sites belonging to the City of Tshwane, including substations and reservoirs, for a 3-year period. And then it was recommended, the BEC therefore recommend that the tender for the appointment of service provider to provide security services at various sites belonging to the City of Tshwane, including substations and reservoirs for a 3-year period, be cancelled due to materials irregularity.
Thank you. Can you then flip over for the record to read on the very next page what was then resolved following that recommendation?
It was resolved at point 1 that TMPD 32425, that tender as be cancelled due to material irregularity as indicated below. And then that during the evaluations of the tender, the committee identified following misalignment and material irregularities. That during the meeting between the BEC and probity teams on 26 August 25, it became apparent that there were multiple interpretations of the specifications, particularly the pricing schedule which was issued as an addendum. In regard to the interpretation of the addendum, it stipulated that the pricing schedule must be completed in full, no blank spaces, and the BEC interpretations is that the pricing schedule need not to have blank spaces. And according to the probity team, the blank spaces must be completed with numerical figures. The specifications stipulated that some areas do not require armed guard, whereas the mandatory requirement dictate that bidders who do not submit firearm licenses as part of their bid would be disqualified. Therefore, it's a disadvantaging those who do not have firearm licenses. The specifications were also silent on the PSIRA pricing guidelines that should be considered.
Thank you. Can we then, for completeness, deal with the person who recommended and again the ultimate approval?
The committee's chairperson, Mr. Gareth Manisi, also then recommended on the 28th of October 2025, and it was again signed off by the city manager as the counting officer on the 29th of October 2025.
Thank you, Commissioner Spees. Can we then pick it up from following this cancellation? Can we go then pick it up at paragraph 27?
So there was obviously then a decision made that this process, because it's now cancelled, it must be started afresh. And then we obviously as a department during December, we revisited the specifications to make sure that it is corrected as per the previous cancellation report, that there could be no ambiguous in this. And a new tender was then started afresh, which is now TMPD 7, 2025-26. This tender was approved at the BSC meeting in January 26. It was advertised and it closed on the 10th of March. So when I made the statement where after it will be evaluated, this is obviously in process now. There's a BEC committee that's been appointed that is in the process of evaluating this new tender as we speak now. But as we stand today, we are operating under tender TMPD 2 2016-17 till at least 30 June 2026, this financial year, while this tender is evaluated and awarded.
Just to understand how the process works, in that recommendation, which is signed by Mr. Mnisi as chairperson of the BAC, you have the city manager approving the cancellation. How does it work? If the city manager didn't agree with the reasons provided by the BAC for cancelling, and therefore they're not agreeing with the recommendation to cancel, how does it get resolved?
Commissioner, luckily I'm not a city manager, but if a city manager disagrees with the committee, the BAC committee, or the recommendation, I think that he will refuse to sign. He will refer it back to most probably the group audit and risk to do a forensic investigation about why the committee makes the decision. If the report doesn't clearly explain the legislative compliance and why it's making this recommendation. So if I was the city manager and I don't want to sign because my BAC make a recommendation which doesn't make sense to me, I will refer it to the group audit legal to actually verify the correctness of it, and I will also refer it for forensic investigation, and I will not approve that. However, if the report comes to me as the city manager and looks correct, and the reasons and everything is stated as correct, and the chairperson signs it off as recommended, I obviously will then sign, because there is a trust relationship between the city manager and the subordinates underneath him, that they will do the correct work.
I guess what I'm asking is, and to the extent that you're familiar with the prescripts about these matters, is the city manager in this kind of situation obliged to approve as a formality, or in fact he does have real power? He could refuse to approve.
No, the city manager has definitely got real power. He can refuse.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Spees. In the next paragraphs, you deal with payments of this tender, and obviously the financial implications of the extensions of this tender on the TMPD. Can you just pick it up then on paragraph 29 of your statement, Commissioner?
This tender itself comprises of two elements to it. One is what we call the watchman services, which is paid to the 22 monthly companies, which is sites that have been identified where they are deployed on a regular basis, on a monthly basis. And then there's a second portion which we call internally ad hoc services. Ad hoc services is emergency need. It is when it's a situation where there could be a break-in at the site on a Friday evening and we need emergency guards at a short notice. That is ad hoc services, and these are then temporarily, and in the new tender, for instance, that will be an hourly service, and if that hourly service extends to be longer than a month, then we will pay the monthly service. That's the idea behind ad hoc services. It's when it's a short-term, immediate solution. Ad hoc also relates to the city departments will identify, they, for instance, have capex projects where they build new facilities. It could be that the water services department will, for instance, or water and sanitation will build a new hydroelectrical scheme. And then in the middle of a financial year, the hydroelectrical scheme is completed and it's handed over to the city as a completed project. While it's under construction, the service provider doing the construction is responsible for the security, for himself. But when he hands it over to the city and it becomes the city's property, the moment that happens, the city must become responsible for the protection of that. So it could be that there's no planning in place, that we know what other departments are doing, and then at a very short notice we are informed that there's a new site or a new facility, and we have to place then ad hoc guards. So that tender consists of these two components. There's like a fixed component and then there's an ad hoc component to it. And during this, what was discovered...
Sorry, Commissioner Spees, just to understand you well then, is that once you are part of the security on the panel, on what do you call the watchman service, is that you'll be allocated a particular site that you guard constantly and be paid on a monthly basis. And then on the other hand, there is the ad hoc part where you have to be able to come in as and when you are called to assist as the security provider, service provider. Is that correct?
That's correct. Originally in 2016-17, when the tender was started, the city had a total of 1,087 sites that have been, a risk assessment has been concluded on those sites, on the 1087 sites. And out of that, they were then categorized in category high risk, medium risk, and low risk. And the high risk sites, which is normally obviously included, is the infrastructure sites like energy substations. Those sites are then allocated to security guards over the 7 regions of the city. And when it now gets to 2025, the portion of those sites have got permanent guards because they're considered high risk. And then the lower risk has either no guards or technology, maybe alarm system deployed to them. But the ad hoc services is when a department comes along and says, I don't have any guards, or there's an influx of security breaches, We experience, for instance, a sabotage at a substation or an in-feed station like Kwaga. We need to increase the security. So the energy department will approach us then and say, I need ad hoc guards. And from us as a department, we obviously don't have the budget. We've got a very limited budget for that. And there's then a demand that the other departments, when you come along and you say, I want ad hoc services added to the service, they must then budget and fund it in that process. So the ad hoc services is a temporary solution while something is happening. It's not supposed to be a long-term solution at all.
Commissioner, let me take you back to 952 and the recommendation and approval, the recommendation by the chairperson of the BAC, Mr. Nisi, and the approval by the city manager. I'm just thinking, and this of course is also based on chats that were displayed here and on which testimony was given, some of which suggested that it was suggested to Mr. Mnisi that make sure that there is no award and that there are extensions, the upshot of which would obviously be that the incumbents continue rendering services. Now, I will not ask you to comment on that, as I indeed said to Mr. Musigiri, you do not have to. But what I'm getting at is this. If indeed what those chats show us may have led to or informed this extension, so what appears proper here and on which there's a recommendation and approval may well have been simulated and not something real, so to speak. So the short point I want to make is that unbeknown to a city manager, the accounting officer, the possibility cannot be discounted that they may actually be signing off on something that is simulated. Would you accept that?
Commissioner, I would agree with you. Even I didn't know anything about it, and it's like there's a trust relationship that your subordinates will do the correct thing, and I obviously didn't know anything about the understream or undercurrent discussions and things that is happening. But it is possible that officials can contrive to create this at the bottom end.
All right, thank you, thank you.
Commissioner Spees, in trying to understand what you've dealt with in terms of the watchman services and the ad hoc services, we have sampled a company called Goobies 85 Solutions, which you deal with at paragraph 30 of your statement. Can you take it from there and just deal with it?
Okay. During the existence of the tender, the service provider, who was paid the largest amount for ad hoc services specifically, was Goobies 85 Solutions. I've also attached a spreadsheet listing the total payments made between July 2024 and June 25. And this is also further reflected on Goobies 85 Solutions bank statement, which is annexure RS28. And during this time, this period for the ad hoc services alone, a total amount of 59,133,986.32 was paid to Goobies for ad hoc services only, over and above their normal monthly deployment of guards, which average approximately 3.5 million rand a month. That's their normal deployment, but the ad hoc is from over and above that amount.
Commissioner Spees, perhaps let's just take one step back before you move on to paragraph 31. You've made reference to annexure R82, which you said it's a sample of the bank statement of Goobies. Can we just go there? And perhaps to be correct, it's not a sample of the entire statement. We've taken out at least what's the payments made to Goobies by Tshwane. That will be page, so it's file 404, the small file, and then it's by page 953.
Correct, Commissioner. It's, as I stated, it's just the amounts that was paid to Goobies on ad hoc services that is reflected in that statement.
And to be correct, in your statement, Commissioner Spees, you say that this will reflect amounts between July 2024 and June 2025. But if you pay close attention, unless I'm mistaken, it seems on the second column that total only relates to payments made in 2025.
The ad hoc services, when I actually look at it, there's other emails that I will touch later on. It originates from an email which was sent on the 12th of March. And in that email, it was mentioned that in January 2025 and February 2025, it escalated, that the ad hoc escalated. So that's why this is only looking at that period of the 6 months, but it's in the financial year 24-25 when this was drawn from what was paid to Goobies.
And Chair, at the relevant times, we will draw the necessary links with the chats that was happening at that relevant time to show the effect of these payments. I will not put that to Commissioner Spees to deal with. Commissioner Spees, perhaps then you can go to paragraph 31 that you started dealing with.
So during this time, that amount of 59 million rand was paid to Goobies 85 for ad hoc services only. But I have been informed that Mr. Manisi and Deputy Commissioner Dlamini communicated with each other on 5 March by sending messages through Sergeant Nkosi in relation to the creation of purchase orders for ad hoc services. The purchase orders created out of this process were registered on the TMPD system only on the 6th of March. And these include purchase orders for ad hoc services ostensibly procured for Goobies 85 solution in the aggregated amount of 13,635,133.60, and that's 11 million plus VAT. And I've attached a spreadsheet of those as well. I must actually state that obviously I've been informed of this. I haven't at that stage, and as I stated, I was appointed on 1 March 2025, and my first week at Tshwane Metro Police was a administrative induction, contract sign, payroll, admin, uniform issue. Effectively, I started to work on Monday the 10th, actually doing work, and on the 12th, I discovered an email which then referred back. I didn't know these were happening at the back end at all.
Can you, for the record, just tell us what the roles or positions of Mr. Mnisi and Dlamini are, and if they are still with the city of Tshwane?
Mr. Manisi is the Chief Financial Officer of the city of Tshwane, and Deputy Commissioner Dlamini is a Deputy Chief Metro Police in the city of Tshwane, and he is the Deputy Chief of Support and Administrative Services.
And they are both still there?
Yes, Mr. Manisi is definitely still there. Commissioner Dlamini, I have seen in the media, and I've been informed that he has been suspended on last week Friday due to his name being appeared here at the Commission.
And who's the Chief of Police?
The Chief of Police is Commissioner Yolanda Faru.
Say that again?
Commissioner Yolanda Faru.
F-A?
R-O.
F-A-R-O?
Yes. It's Pharaoh. And
not the biblical Pharaoh there.
Could be biblical, but it is F-A-R-O.
And for the record, Chair, she is lined up to come and assist with some information to the Commission. Commissioner
I
Spees.
notice that Commissioner Dlamini's name is spelled with an H here, whereas, if I'm not mistaken, everywhere else it's without the H.
Commissioner, for a change, I think I'm correct.
Oh, is it?
His rank as well is, I've noticed that his rank is indicated as general. He is not a general, he is deputy commissioner is his rank, and his post is deputy chief of Metro Police.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
I think we're very much scolded by Commissioner Spees during consultations that we must not refer to him as general. But I think we might have picked that up from the conversations, but it's correct that he should at least enjoy the rank of deputy commissioner.
Correct.
Perhaps then, because we need to correct something, Commissioner Spees, can you go to page 954? It's the same file we're dealing with, 4 of 4. So you'll just have to flip over 2 pages if you haven't left that page. So it's file 4, page 954. That will be Annexure 8.1 that you refer to in your statement. Now, at the very first paragraph in your statement, you say that these amounts here are for ad hoc services. Can you speak to that, because that does not seem to be the case?
The amounts on page 954 is purchase orders that's been created specifically for ad hoc services. It is smaller amounts, for instance, 353,000 and 269,000. And if you total that up, which has been created on the 6th of March when it was created, it comes to a total amount of 11 million, whereas Goobies 85 Solutions has a normal watchman services that is deployed, which is in the other spreadsheet, of 3.5 million per month. So this is specifically related to ad hoc services that has been created.
Thank you. Can we then go to, I think we're starting to deal with the next paragraph, 32.
Maybe before you, sorry, maybe before you do that, Commissioner, we, in the evidence of Sergeant Nkosi, the WhatsApp exchanges that are referred to, there is a series of exchanges that are about uploading the purchase orders and payments being approved. They've been uploaded, they have been shown on my system. There's a bit of that. Now, looking at this 954 page that you were looking at, the purchase orders were created all on the same day, or at least they carry the same date, the 6th of March 2025. For purposes of services delivered and for which payment is being claimed, because all of that exchange ends up, all this uploading of purchase orders ends up with payment being approved and made within a very short space of time. What does it mean when the purchase order is uploaded? Has the service already been rendered and invoiced for, or ordinarily the purchase order comes before the service? How does the system work, as you understand? I understand that it's somebody's specialty, but to the extent that you're here and you're speaking to page 954, how would it work?
Commissioner, normally within the department, there will first be a requisition created by the department for services to be rendered. And then a purchase order will be generated and based on the requisition from the department. And that purchase order will then be given to the supplier.
Okay.
He will then deliver the work as per the purchase order. And at the end of the period when he delivered the work, he will submit an invoice.
I see.
And that invoice will then be processed, linked to the purchase order and to the requisition. And that payment will then be effected. So for watchman services, there is a purchase order created in the beginning of the financial year because it's a fixed deployment of how many guards will be deployed. And that is then one purchase order for that service for the year. Sorry. But the ad hoc services, purchase orders are created as and when it's needed. And that is then, as soon as the purchase order is created, it is then paid per invoice as it's delivered. There is also a monitoring team from the Asset Protection Security Services that if there is a purchase order, that they will actually go and inspect and see that there is guards deployed, there is work being done, and then the invoice process is signed off. This is done in my division in the security section portion of it, which is headed by Director Chukuru Malachi. So he and even the award letters will then verify that the work has been done, sign it off, and submit it for payment.
Okay, thank you.
I suppose, Commissioner Spees, the more pointed question would be, is it possible to load these purchase orders and have them processed where the actual work has not been done?
I can't do that. The purchase orders is created by the finance department or in our department. I don't know exactly who the individual is who created. If they're corrupt, most probably it can happen, but it shouldn't be able to happen. There should be a trail of the requisition, sign off, the purchase order trail. There should be paperwork trail to that, and that should then be linked to work actually being conducted as well.
Yes, I think we will touch base a bit later on ghost, at least ghost employees that are at least not positioned where they are, and all of that, dealing with the invoices. But then can we proceed?
But just before that, you referred to site inspections to see where or verify whether work is indeed being done. Are those inspections ad hoc?
Commissioner, what we've done is we've in APSS, the asset protection, we have very few people. We have only got 7 regional supervisors. But the department itself, through Commissioner Farah, we have decided to deploy 54 Metro Police officers to the same function, so that they, as per shift basis, that they actually visit all sites. And the sites are randomly visited, and OB entries are made. There's also a checklist, which as per the SLA, there's a penalty clauses if there's non-compliance to specific items. If a security guard, for instance, doesn't have uniform on, or if a security guard doesn't have a torch, or a security guard doesn't have a PSIRA appointment card. For all of that, there's penalty clauses that's being levied. So since I took over, there wasn't previously, until last year, April, there wasn't really penalty clauses levied. But from May last year, penalty clauses are definitely implemented because of the monitoring system that we put in place to make sure that the guard deployment are verified and are checked. And if there's then mishaps where it doesn't happen, there's penalty clauses against them. Even if there's a breach at, let's say, for instance, one of our stores, there's a breach and lawnmowers or grass cutters are stolen, the company is, if it's their negligence related to it, there is guards that was on duty and they slept, for instance, in that. The levy will be either replacement of the goods, or the value of the goods will then be a credit note put or a debit note put against the invoice. So that is definitely taking place now.
Oh, at the beginning of your response, you used open quote randomly, close quote. Does that mean the inspections are ad hoc or not really?
It's randomly. The inspections itself is not ad hoc. It's a team that's been appointed, and they work a specific shifts because we work on a 24/7 system. So that team is assigned as a inspection and monitoring team.
All right.
Their function is not ad hoc. They must
All right.
do the inspections of all sites in the region and the sector where they are deployed.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Musugiri?
Thank you. Commissioner Spees, can you then proceed to paragraph 32?
The total amount paid under this TMPD 2 2016-2017 to all the service providers since inception, that is 1 March 2022 when they started, to the end of January 2026, because when I draw this statement, that was when we actually draw the figures. We always pay 30 days later, so the figures is dated until January 26, was 2,923,467 rand and 84 cents. Which makes it approximately 730,857,466 rand per annum, our annum. It's a financial year, which is July to June. And then I've created a spreadsheet of a summary of all payments to the 22 companies from March, including the total paid to each company during this period, attaches an extra RS29. But this excludes
So
ad
the
hoc
15
services.
the 15-month extension, it's R1 billion. I mean, if the contract, the 3-year contract expired in February last year, and you extended it, and now it's been extended again until June this year. I mean, that's at least a year and 4 months. That's easily R1 billion.
It's approximately 750 million.
A year.
A year.
And then you add the other 4 months. Because remember,
Yes.
you said the extension, the current one, is going to run until June.
That's correct.
So a year would have been last year March until this year March. And then you add, May, June, hopefully they would have finalized it by then. That's 14 months.
That's correct, Commissioner.
So it gets you over 800 million easily.
This is only for the watchman services. When we add the ad hoc that escalated this year, it's going to be close to R1 billion.
Yeah.
And I must state in the spreadsheet, sorry, Commissioner.
Or you want to take us there?
In the spreadsheet, when it was created,
Commissioner, maybe let me just direct you to where to find the spreadsheet. That will be on
Perhaps
page...
let's deal with the spreadsheet at 1125. The spreadsheet.
Indeed. Commissioner Spees, before we went for tea, we're talking about an amount of 2 billion, and you prepared a spreadsheet to demonstrate how that amount came out. The spreadsheet, it's on file 4, the small one again, at page 963. So 963 will be where you deal with a total of 2 billion, and the actual document starts at 956.
that's correct, Commissioner.
Yes, can you speak to that?
I
Please.
think 2 billion is an understatement. I mean, this is almost 3 billion. Is it not 2.9 billion?
That's correct, Chair.
Commissioner, this I drawn up when we started with the tender. I created the spreadsheet to keep track of everything right from the beginning. So on the left-hand side, the columns is the 22 companies. And then I had to go back in history with the assistance of the previous staff so that I can get the original amounts which was paid. And then it lists the companies per month, how much was paid to the companies. However, I must, right from the point out, say that amount is related to the watchman services, because even though in March 25, when this allegation of increase of ad hoc services came up, I even draw graphs from these to see where's the spike, that I can actually notice what happened if there was a spike at all. And I couldn't get any spike in it immediately from that. So to me, this graph just shows the total that's been paid for the watchman services, the 2.9 monthly deployment at fixed sites. The watchman services, what I've discovered in the meantime, is paid from the requesting department's vote numbers. So if there's water and sanitation department or energy department or whichever department asks for ad hoc watchman services, the funding is made available from their budget and it's not reflected on us as TMPD and in the payments that is reflected here.
Commissioner Spees, is it then correct, when you look at this spreadsheet, the amounts there are fairly average and consistent? Would it be then correct to at least postulate that if there was any room for manipulation, it will have to fall under the ad hoc services as compared to the watchman services. Do you have any
Correct.
comment to that?
The watchman services, the deployment, it very slightly differ. It could be that there's 1 or 2 guards added over a period of 4 to 5 months and then reduced again with 1 or 2 guards. So the payments stay consistent through the years. There's very, very little movement there in the watchman services. And that's, in the analysis as well that I performed on this, that's why it sounded to me very strange and fishy that there's these large amounts being paid to security without us picking it up. And only then, when we start to delve into this deeper and deeper, we actually discovered that, but the fluctuations actually came from the ad hoc services that was assigned on the sideline.
Commissioner Spees, can you then pick it up from the next paragraph where you deal with the financial obligations, paragraph 34 of the statement?
At the end of June, which is the end of our financial year, it was very clear that our budget needs an upliftment of 91 million rand because we've exceeded our budget and we could not pay for the services because of these sideline ad hoc services. So there was then, by the Chief of Police, a specific letter that was drafted in the department to say that the service providers for the period of May to June 2025 is that they must be paid, and it's recommended by the Chief of Police has actually created a letter to the CFO, who is Mr. Gareth Manisi, and then it was approved by the city manager, Mr. Metler, that the upliftment of the funds be authorized so that the service providers could be paid in the financial year. And that letter is attached to my reference as RS 210, but it's obviously not me that actually signed or drafted it. It was drafted and done by the Deputy Chief Dlamini in the Support and Finance Admin, and then signed off by the Chief of Police as recommended and requested, and the CFO to recommend it, and approved by the city manager.
Chair, I believe that this letter is quite important, this upliftment letter of funds. Can Mr. Spees go to it? I need you to read it into the record. That letter appears, it's still on file 4, page 964. And perhaps for the record, then read paragraph 1, 2, 3, and the last paragraph of that letter.
The subject of the letter is upliftment of funds on security services, watchman services. The Tshwane Metro Police Department wishes to seek approval for the upliftment of funds on security services to the amount of 91 million rand for 24-25 financial year, to settle invoices for security services rendered for the period of May and June 25. The city operates a hybrid security model that integrates both in-source security guards and contracted private security companies. This approach was adopted following a court ruling in August 21, which directed the city to contract 22 private security service providers for a 3-year period. This contracted services began the services with the city on 1 March 22, and the contract expired on 28 February 25. An approved extension of the current contract was set to expire on the 30th of June 25. The BAC approved a further extension of the security services for a period of 3 months from 1 July to 30 September 25. During the financial year, the city approved and made a budget available of 307,129,702 million for provision of security services to protect the property, assets and personnel of the city of Tshwane. And during the budget adjustment period, an additional 350 million was allocated to this service as the initial budget allocated was in deficit. The adjusted budget was calculated and determined based on our monthly expenditure on the normal security services contract and it meant that the city would be able to honor its financial contractual obligations until the end of financial year if only normal security services were honored. The budget for watchman services is centralized with the TMPD. The client departments are allowed to procure ad hoc security services that's based on their security needs and following the need assessment. The above mentioned provision is to be followed provided that such approved is made subject to the availability of funds. The cost thereof should be borne by the client department for these additional services. And the client department's water and sanitation department approved additional security services but did not make funds available to enable the TMPD to settle the invoices. The understanding was that the client department would identify savings within their budget and transfer funds to the TMPD vote. However, that did not materialize. This resulted in the TMPD having to pay for the ad hoc services rendered from the normal contract budget, thereby creating a deficit of 57 million for the month of June, and a further 34 million rand, total of 91 million rand, will be required for the months of May and June to cover for the ad hoc services that would have been rendered. This is then recommended by Commissioner Faru as the Chief of Police, and it was recommended by Mr. Menisi as the Chief Financial Officer, and he had a comment that he added to say that the department, to ensure that mechanisms are put in place to ensure that expenditures within the limits of the budget in the 25-26 financial year, and it was then approved by the City Manager, Mr. Metler, on the 7th of the 2nd July 2025.
Commissioner Spees, is there anything that you want to add or comment on that request for an upliftment of that 91 million?
The budget initially was created, if you based it on the previous financial year, the initial budget allocated was half of what was normally allocated. And that's why in the adjustment budget, the budget was adjusted to make sure that it is comparable with the previous financial year and the projected services. However, when the watchman services was started to being paid and the ad hoc suddenly came in January, February and March, the department processed those ad hoc services against our budget and not against the client department budget where it originated from. And that made that by the end of April, we were already depleted on our own budget. And then in May and June, we obviously didn't have the funds from our own budget to pay it. And that's why the upliftment was then stated to say, but the regional department should have paid it. And the money should be uplifted so that it can actually be transferred, because the departments between one another should have done the transfer into one another's, do a journal and what they call a GL, which is a general ledger vote number to do the accounting of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Spees. The next paragraph, it identifies a person by the name of Tsukuru Malachi. And the next paragraph, they have significant relevance to him. Can you take us through that and also explain who is Mr. Malachi? Where does he fall in a chain of command within the TMPD? Thank you.
Director Tsukuru Malachi is, and I just have to go slightly back into the history, is that the section that dealt with the security tender in the 2016-27 process was then called the Asset Protection Services Unit, which was a unit within the division specialized policing services. That unit was relocated to the City Manager's office in 2019 from TMPD. So there was an instruction that this unit are relocated to the City Manager's office, and that project managers on the various award letters was then indicating that Director Tsukuru Malachi and Mr. Nava Pillay is, in terms of the award letters, managing the security contract, TMPD 2 2016-17. And the whole period from 2019, from the start of the tender, everything was then done from this APS unit in the City Manager's office. In July 24, this unit was then relocated back to Tshwane Metro Police with effect from 1 July 2024. And it was placed then under the new division of which I'm now the divisional head, Asset Protection and Security Services. And part of my portfolio is that this division of Asset Protection and Security Services have then this section within me, which is the Security Services and Guarding section. And Director Chukuru Malachi is appointed as the Director for Security and Guarding Services, and he reports directly to me. The deployment, the monitoring of the security companies, and the invoicing processes fall directly under his auspices. He signs off on it, he does the deployment of it, and once he signs off it and do the deployment, he obviously, as the sectional head, he submits it directly to the Deputy Chief, Support and Administration, which falls under the control of Deputy Commissioner Dlamini. And however, Director Malachi has been suspended by Commissioner Faro on recommendation from myself since the 4th of July due to consequence management being implemented against him. And at the moment, Colonel Reginald Mashlangu is acting in his stead formally as the Director of Security and Guarding Services. And that matter of Malachi is still ongoing. It's sub judice. It started as the disciplinary hearing, but it's not yet concluded.
Commissioner Spees, just to assist the Commission, how has been your relationship with Director Malachi since you arrived in March 2025? The professional relationship, I mean.
It's been a very difficult relationship because I was appointed, and in my very first week, I've set up an appointment or meeting with all my subordinates to introduce myself to them. And during the meeting, the discussions was held, and everyone introduced himself to me and what their function is so that I understand who they are. And he elected to speak last. And when he then started to speak, he opened the discussion completely disrespectful towards me, stating that, yeah, he's got a higher rank than me because he is a commissioned officer and I'm not a commissioned officer. So I then called him into my office after the meeting to discuss with him, to say, but you know, he doesn't understand the concept of a commissioned officer. A commissioned officer in the South African Police Services Act is a South African Police Services Office who has been commissioned and signed off by the President because of his appointment as an officer. But that is when you resign from the South African Police Service, it becomes a ceremonial rank that you, if you're not fired, you can keep the ceremonial rank, but you have no powers, no function whatsoever. It's only a ceremonial rank. And he was, prior to his appointment in the city of Tshwane, he was in the South African Police Service. So, and I understood that his rank was either captain or colonel. And then we had a discussion about that, and I stated to him, it's true that I'm not a commissioned officer because I'm not in the South African Police Service. We are in the Metro Police. And he must make a choice how he wants to be addressed by me. Does he want to be addressed as a captain or a colonel or as a director? Because he's a director appointed, and I will address him as director, or else I can address him as a colonel, which is a much lower equivalent rank to that. And he then stated, no, he's a director. So we left it at that. But whenever I give him instructions, he would actively disobey my instructions, and he would not do whatever I have informed him to do. And it came to a head when, and that's part of his disciplinary hearing, where there's a forensic investigation that's being done into breaches at our city, and also of declarations that has not been fully declared in terms of a senior management declarations. And that's why he was then placed on suspension, and a disciplinary matter has been initiated against him, and that is still carrying on to date.
And then at paragraph 39, when you say all deployment and monitoring of security companies, would that include the deployment of ad hoc or security, or what do you mean by that?
That is his function. So as per the appointment letter and in the SLA, I think in the SLA it's under point 9 of the SLA, but in the appointment letter where it states that Director Malachi and Nava Pillay is responsible for the management of this contract. And then in the SLA, it states specifically his position as Director Security Services. He's responsible for deployment. He must therefore, if there's a necessity for a deployment, he makes the decision to deploy security officers.
Thank you, Commissioner. The next topic,
Does that mean, Commissioner Spees, that any questions about whether there had been deployment and therefore justifying an invoice from a service provider and the payment of that invoice are matters that Mr. Director Malachi would be accountable, must explain? He's the person to explain that. Is that what you mean in paragraph 39?
Correct, Commissioner. The actual deployment will then obviously be followed by an invoice. And the invoice process, the service provider would submit the invoice to the office. The Asset Protection Security Services officers will deal with a combination and making up the evidence pack that must go to Finance Department, and that will proceed through as an invoice to Director Malachi, will sign off on the invoice, that he certified that the work was conducted. And from him, it will then go to the TMPD finance section that will do the uploading into the finance system and do the bureaucracy process at the back end of that. I must state, however, and I think it's in my very next portion, is that where we will touch on that when we get to it, is that the process has been slightly changed for that, is that we do not allow ad hoc services now. We've introduced a new procedure from between the 12th of March, which initiated from the 1st of April, where the client departments would now fill in a form that has been designed by us, and this form will then have to be signed off with a motivation and full explanation why they would need ad hoc guards. It will go to their group head, which is the head of their department, and it will, if the group head has a cluster head, because some of the departments are clustered together with a chief operating officer, it will also have to be signed off by the chief operating officer that they actually need this extra ad guards, and that they make provision that we can use their funding and budget. It will then come through to us as a department, to me specifically. I will then instruct a different section within the Asset Protection and Security Services than the guarding services to go and do a minimum security risk assessment based on this application. And based on what the risk assessment then prescribed, we will then instruct the guarding side that you may now proceed to deploy ad hoc guards. So between the 12th of March and the 1st of April, this new process was instituted to control the ad hoc guards in a much better method.
When you say the 1st of April, you mean 2026?
2025.
I see.
It's not yet.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spees, the next topic, you deal with the stoppage of this ad hoc security services. And in that paragraph, take us through that paragraph and then you make reference to an email after that. Perhaps that's with the paragraph and then we'll go to the annexure to that.
Maybe before you do that, again, something that I wanted to check with Mr. Musikidi. This evidence about Director Malachi, on the face of it, it's quite benign when you look at the statement, and I'm concerned that we may miss the significance of it because of how you're handling it, if it's going to come up, if it is of particular, or he is of particular significance along the way.
Yes, Commissioner Baloyi. The very next subtopic deals with that. Remember, the witness canvassed the nature of the relationship and the chain of command and the instructions given. And we will speak to that when he talks about the stoppage of these ad hoc services and what transpired and what the role of Mr. Malachi then, or how he behaved to that instruction.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner. Commissioner Spees, I think we can then continue from paragraph 41.
On Thursday, the 12th of March, and I have previously mentioned the specific date, just after 4 o'clock the afternoon, I was sent an email that originated from Deputy Commissioner Dlamini. And in this email, he stated that the deployment of ad hoc guards had grown exponentially. There were an extra 30 sites that were added in January 25, and then a further 6 sites were added in February 25, and we are using our own budget and will run short of funding. And I've attached the email then as RS11, and there were 2 attachments as well to this email. The one listed a deployment of sites for January 2025, and the other one listed the sites for February 2025.
Chair, I would just, so the reference there, it's RS211, 1 and 11.2. I would just need to guide the commissioners to the relevant pages. We will have to jump to file 2 of 4.